everyone, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Mighty Moron with me, the United City FM. Welcome along. So, in this first episode, we're going to check out the club a little bit, look at some of the transfer dealings I've already made, look at the pre-season friendlies that I've been through. We'll take a look at the tactic that I want to use and the style of play that I want to use in this first few games of the season, just to see whether we can get off to a good start. And then we're going to have a game in the second tier of the Argentinian football. So welcome to Club Deportivo Moron. I hope you're excited by this particular challenge. It's going to be a really big challenge. But without any further ado, let's get into this first episode. So here we are at Club Deportivo Moron in the second tier of Argentinian football. It's going to be a really big challenge, but the whole purpose of this particular series is to see if we can turn this club into Mighty Moron and take them to the top of Argentinian football, if not beyond, into the Copa Libertadores? Whatever the... however you pronounce that is. That's the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to butcher so many names in this series, and if anybody has a connection to anything in this this part of the world, then I'm really sorry about it. If I make any huge mistakes, just tell me about them in the comments and I'll try and change it. But my pronunciation of some of these club names and player names are going to be atrocious at times, I'm sure. But anyway, we'll get by together. We are at Club Deportivo Moron. It's quite an interesting club. It's never been at the heights of Argentinian football, so there's the challenge immediately for us. But the most imminent challenge is that as of now, as of this season, we are predicted to finish bottom of the pile in the second tier of Argentinian football. If we go and have a look at the competition page, we get Primera B Nacional. We can see that there are two groups in it, a Group A and a Group B. We are participating in Group A, but if you go to the season preview, it lumps all of the clubs from the Primera B Nacional together, all 32 of them, and we sit absolutely bottom of the pile, 95-1 odds of getting the title or claiming promotion, or however this is going to work. That's the other thing to say, is it's a little bit convoluted in terms of you go through your league season, then the top one of each group, I think, go into a Champions playoff. And then the sort of next three in the group, I think, go into other playoffs, etc. And eventually some teams are promoted and some teams are relegated. But we'll worry about that if and when it becomes an issue to worry about. The only thing I care about in this very first season is avoiding this spot here, 16th in the division, and getting relegated from the second tier of Argentinian football, because basically that would be series over because there is no league below us to play in anyway. So that's the hope, that we avoid that spot for this particular season and then begin to figure out how we can climb the ranks and see where we can go. We've got basically until the end of the Football Manager 20 cycle. So when FM21 comes out, that will be the cut-off point. If the cut-off point isn't, we've already been relegated and the series has stopped, or we've achieved all of our goals and the series have stopped. Anything in between can happen either. So there's quite a lot that could go wrong here. But we're going to try as hard as we can to see if we can get the potentially Mighty Moron higher up than they've ever been before. In the first summer that I've pretty much been through, we'll look at the fixtures that I've had in terms of friendlies in a moment or two. But when I first arrived in the club, it was quite a barren wasteland, really. There weren't as many players I'd have liked. There weren't as many staff members as I'd have liked. The budget, in terms of the overall balance of the club, is not too bad. 1.2 something million in there. We had a very small transfer budget that I had to pile into the wage budget to basically try and balance out getting as many players through the door as I can, pretty much on free transfers. You can see that we're now spending a little bit over the wage budget, unfortunately, but there was just no other way of doing it, it felt like, to me anyway. This squad needed a lot of improvements. If we go and check out the transfers, you can see all the transfer business has been done. The transfer window has closed. In the transfer history, you can see that we sold one player, just because he was surplus to requirements, because I had 3 other really okay right-sided midfielders, so I didn't need this one as well. It was a completely imbalanced squad as well. There was no left-sided player when I came into the squad down the left-hand side of the midfield. And to be honest, in the end, it kind of helped me decide what formation I was going to use. But we had to do quite a lot of work. So up until this point here, Matias Gonzalez, everybody above him, the club had already bought in on free transfers before I arrived. A lot of this had happened as well. And then what I've done is all of the ones from Corso down in terms of free transfers, not from clubs. We just found them on the open market. There's a lot to go through. I'm not going to go through each and every player here. We're going to go and have a look at our first 11 in a second or two, just to see what we're working with in terms of our first 11. But temper your expectations a little bit here for the first season or so. We are not looking at great players. We're looking at some okay players with some okay attributes, but overall it's not the best squad you've ever seen. But what I would say is that in terms of numbers, we have improved it. If you remember the transfer window that we went through, I bought in probably 8, I think. And not many have come out of this squad. There was 2 or 3 that came out of this squad. So you can see it was quite small when I first took over. We've had to do some work, but we've done it. We've got basically a 25-man squad together. Some youngsters in here, some quite old players in here. I'm looking at you, Ackerman. Damien Ackerman is the old man of the group, and he's 39 years old, and he's still going in the second tier of Argentinian football. He's got some very good attributes in terms of his finishing, etc., penalty taking, and a good leader. He's the vice captain of the club. But his physicals, of course, are really on the decline. So whilst he may have played a big part of this club in previous seasons, the likelihood is that I'm going to use him as a bench player, as an impact substitute that can come on in the latter part of games and hopefully get a couple of goals here and there for us, playing that particular role for us. So we've got a pretty okay squad. I don't think it obviously hasn't improved our chances of not being the bottom side, because the critics still think that we're going to finish bottom. So I haven't been able to do that much good business, it seems. But we are infinitely better than we were. So let's go and have, to start with, let's go and have a look at the pre-season friendlies and see how we've got on since the new players have come into the club. So here we are, on the schedule page. You can see that we had a lot of friendlies. The last competitive game that we played before I took over was in April, where we won in the Copa Argentina 5th round. We since have played the 6th round since I've been in charge of the club, and got a good win actually, 2-1 against Arsenal de Sarandi, sorry. And you can see that we lost to them previously in the pre-season friendlies before the competitive match. So it was a good turnaround. They are predicted to basically finish bottom of the top division of Argentina. So they went up last season, I believe. So yeah, we competed quite well with them in the 6th round of the Copa Argentina and went through there. So that's really positive. And now we get Cologne later in September, so that's a game to look out for. The rest of them have been friendlies, and it's been a bit of a mixed bag. You can see the first couple were fairly ordinary, because we had half a squad at that point and no balance to it whatsoever, and no real idea how the team was going to shape up, etc. But gradually, over the time that we've been in the pre-season friendlies, we've got a little bit better, a little bit more consistent, a little bit harder to beat, and ultimately got several draws and several wins in the latter part of the pre-season, and ended with a couple of wins, which is always positive going into the new season, isn't it? So that's where we've been. In terms of the start that we've got, we play, in a little while in this episode, we play Ferro Carril Oeste. And they are predicted to finish about 9th in the 32 of the second tier of Argentinian football. So you can see that they are a step up from where we are, definitely. So it's going to be a tricky start. Other than that, To be totally honest with you, I don't know how any of these are going to shape up in the first few weeks of the season. We could lose all of the early games because they're all really difficult, or we could win some of them because they're not, and I just can't tell at this moment until the league settles in a little bit and we see where the teams are placed in this particular season. It's going to be a little bit hard to figure out exactly what we're coming up against, to me anyway, because I haven't really managed in South America before on Football Manager. This is a bit of a new experience for me. So if you've got any experience of Argentinian football in terms of in real life or in Football Manager yourself, let me know about it in the comments below, and pass on some of your expertise and see whether I can pick anything up in terms of helping me get some good results for Club Deportivo Moron in the first few games of the season, which I think is going to be quite important to see if we can get a little bit of momentum to start with. So yeah, Ferro Carril Oeste, if that's the right pronunciation, is the first opposition of the season. Then we've got a load of unknowns for me, but it's going to be interesting finding out how we cope with them. So let's go and check out how it is that I want this squad to play, at least in the first few games of the season, whilst we figure out whether that's the right thing to do or not. So here we are on the tactics page. You can see that I've got a custom tactic. I've been building this myself from the ground up as much as I can. So the first thing you notice, it is slightly asymmetric. It's not the style of asymmetric that we've played in some of my other series recently. There is no left-sided midfielder. There literally wasn't one in this squad, or really in the under squads as well, just with the right sort of quality to bring in. So it shaped what I wanted to do for the first few games in the pre-season, and eventually I decided that we might as well keep this system. A lot of what I've seen so far play 4 central midfielders and 2 up top. We're not quite going to do that. We're going to support 1 with 2 just behind, 1 on the right hand side and 1 in the attacking midfield, central midfield role. So it's a little bit lopsided, which is why in this role in central midfield we're playing the Carrilero, because he shuffles from side to side rather than up and down the pitch, and hopefully will fill some of this space up when we're being counter-attacked, for example. So that's the thought process behind the formation itself. It was kind of brought about by a lack of left-sided midfield players. In terms of what we've got in terms of personnel, we've got our reserve goalkeeper Salvia out today, just because he's got a little bit of an issue with his thigh. But he's only out for a couple of games, and he's the reserve goalkeeper anyway. A youngster on the bench, Juan Jark, I want to say. Yep, we'll say that, Jark. He's going to be periphery, really. He's a decent enough youngster. We'll go and have a look at him briefly, because he's got a couple of good attributes, lacking in the determination front, though, quite severely. He's going to be a very, very periphery player, but just one to bring in for numbers' sake, really, and try and cover all of the areas of the pitch that we can. But the main miss today is this guy, Chiachieri. Yep, again, hope so, maybe. He's going to be one of our main strikers. You can see that he doesn't quite have the finishing quality that Ackerman did, but he has a few other bits and pieces that Ackerman doesn't have. And at 39, I just think he's going to be really struggling for fitness and pace as the season wears on. So this guy is going to be one of our main goal scoring threats to start matches, and we'll see where that leads us. He's got a couple in, he's got one in the he's got a couple in the non-competitive games that we played so far, and one in the Copa Argentina, which is good. So he started pretty well for me, to be honest, but he's just picked up a little bit of a knock. He's only going to be out for a couple of days, but it's not worth risking him so early on. So let's go through some of this first team 11, just so we can get a fair idea of some of the players. So the first guy on the list is Galvan. He's going to be our number 1 goalkeeper. You can see his physicals aren't particularly good, but other than that, he's a reasonable goalkeeper for this level. At 25 years old, I think, he's got 3.5-star rating for our current squad. He's got potential of another half-star to gain, possibly. He'll do okay for us. Any of these are probably not going to be long-term prospects, are they, to keep around the club forever, but they're going to have to do a job for us this season, maybe next, some of them. So then we're going to Brogy. Brogy, probably. He's going to be our right-sided defender, our right fullback, and I think he's pretty decent, actually. Great determination levels, a reasonable amount of pace and acceleration, good enough crossing, good enough tackling, teamwork and work rate and stamina are decent. I think this is a fairly decent right fullback for the level that we're playing at. On the left side of the defence, on the left fullback position, we have Mayola. And again, I think it's a fairly similar story. Good determination, and the rest of it is reasonably good attributes, around the 13 out of 20 mark for some of the key areas. So I think he's going to be quite useful to us. And I think it's this guy that is our captain. I believe that's so. I'm still getting used to this setup myself, but I think he is. The two central defenders that we're going with to start the season is Gomez. Lacks a little bit of pace, but good heading ability, reasonable positioning, good strength. So he's going to be the one that maybe sort of flies into the tackles a little bit more and tries to win the headed balls that come into our penalty box. And alongside him, we've got Corzo, who you saw that we bought in for a free transfer. And I think, considering the level that we're playing at, again, there's some glaring gaps in this guy's attributes. But in general, the key, most of the key points are reasonable, I would say, for this level. So I'm hoping that he's going to do okay for us. I'm hoping that his pace will get him out of a few problems occasionally. 14 pace at this level is probably going to be quite decent. Then as the holding midfield player, we've got Lilo, Christian Lilo. And again, it's the same old story that we're going to find through most of this side. He's average, but that's not too bad for this sort of level of football. Reasonable amount of stamina, good work rate, so he's going to be a good defensive ball-winning midfield player, I hope defensive midfielder. Tackling is reasonable, marking is good. So, yeah, I think he's going to be okay for us, and we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. A couple of newer guys in midfield, Godoy and Kraneviter. Kraneviter, he's come in to play in the central midfield role in our midfield, so he's going to hold his position a bit. He's not going to be going side to side like the Carrilero is next to him down the left hand side. He's just going to hold that central midfield position. Got a reasonable passing, not brilliant vision though, is it particularly, but a reasonable work rate. Again, some good, some pretty bad, and that's just what we're having to work with. D'Angelo is the guy that I'm going to be asking to play in that central attacking midfield role, and I quite like him. I think that he's reasonable. Again, his physicals are not fantastic, but his main attributes for the role that we want him to play are all pretty okay. 13, 14, 12. There's some good attributes in there for this level of football. So I'm hoping that he's going to be able to perform well for us in that attacking midfield sort of playmakery role just behind the striker. On the right hand side, we're going to be starting with Ramirez. He's got some experience, which is another reason why he starts ahead of some of them. He's not got the best crossing in the world. We've got a better crosser on the bench potentially, but I think all round passing and off the ball, etc. I think this guy is going to be helpful to us and has got a little bit of experience in age, if nothing else. So he'll be playing down that right hand side, and then very much one of the third choice strikers pretty much is this guy Gizzy. And he is basically our third choice striker. A lot of issues in the mental attributes, a lot of gaps there, unfortunately. But I couldn't find a better one to come in at the price range that we had, etc. And the wages. We've had problems with attracting players through wages demands, basically. We haven't got the wages to pay. So he's going to be third choice mostly. You'd think maybe I would put Ackerman in at this point to start the game then potentially, but I'm dead set, I think, that whatever happens, Ackerman is going to work from the bench, just because I just don't think he's got the stamina and the pace, etc., to cause people problems throughout a 90-minute game anymore, unfortunately, at the age that he is. So that may change, but that's the plan. But of course, remember that mostly it's going to be this guy. If I can click on him, Chiachieri. I might call him Cherry on the top, maybe, rather than Chiachieri. But he's going to be the main guy, I hope, that's going to get us the goals. So that's basically the starting 11. There's loads of others to introduce you to as the game progresses over the next few episodes, etc. Some of them are decent, some of them really not so much, but as good as we've got. So we're going to go with it and just see where it takes us for this particular season. In terms of how we're going to play, obviously the custom tactic doesn't really give much of a game away at this point. We're on a cautious mentality because I'm aware that we're going to be the underdogs in most of the games, so we're not going to go gun-ho at all. We're going to try and keep this sort of shape here and try and soak up the pressure in front of our back four as much as is possible. In terms of in possession, we're going to sit quite narrowly in attacking, and in terms of our passing directness, etc., we've got a standard directness, so we're not going to go short tiki-taka because we haven't got it, but I don't want to just blast it up the top either. So we're going to go reasonably middling in terms of directness, a reasonably middling tempo as well, and occasionally the frequency of time wasting is sort of middling as well, just because I think that's going to help us occasionally. Other than that, we're keeping the sort of tactical instructions to a minimum here, just because we don't really want to overrule the players. In transition, again, it's fairly similar. We don't have a when possession has been lost instruction. We're going to be sort of able to do a little bit of both maybe. In terms of when we get it, we are going to try and counter-attack a little bit. That's the part of the cautious mentality, but you can see not all of them will. Some of them will hold their position and maintain some discipline. But that's the plan, that we'll soak up a bit of pressure and then potentially counter-attack here and there as much as we can. And again, the rest of it, not so many instructions, so not to confuse everybody. We're going to play a standard defensive line, a little bit of a higher line, stretch the play a little bit. If that doesn't work, we can always bring it back and make us even more secure potentially. But I don't want us just to sit back and be too defensively minded, because otherwise teams are going to take us apart, I think. We're going to sit quite narrowly in defensive width, just because I think that's going to be better for us to sort of crowd our penalty box a little bit and try and defend it there rather than spread ourselves too thin. A standard pressing intensity. Other than that, again, not too many instructions. So for now, that's what we're going to play. None of that, really, absolutely none of this is written in stone. If this doesn't work and we get off to some dreadful start over the next few weeks, then any and everything of this can change. But that's what we're going to start with and see where it takes us, because I'm aware that we are predicted to finish bottom, so we do need to be a little bit careful about going too gun-ho. So that is the style of play that we're going to play with. And for our first game in the Argentinian second tier against Ferro Carril Oeste, we've got Galvan in goal with Gomez and Corzo in central defence, Brogi at right back, Mayola at left back, Lilo, Crane Vitta and Godet in central midfield, with D'Angelo and Ramirez supporting Gizzi up top, and a bench of Stefan, Gozzarino, Olivier, Nizzo, Basidas, Glaby and Ackerman. And eventually I'm going to get used to at least some of those names, but bear with me. Anyway, here we go into the first game of a brand new save. So let's see what happens. So as you would expect, really, I've calmly asked them just to impress me really in this game and see if they can put on a performance of some sort. We're at home, which helps, and we've got quite a reasonably good stadium. It's about like a 30,000 capacity stadium with about 28,000 seats, I believe. So it's room for us to grow into it a little bit in terms of the amounts of attendances that we get. So that's good for potentially the future of the club in terms of finances, maybe. We have to defend a free kick here, and they put it harmlessly over the top of the bar in the end. It was a good opportunity to whip the ball in, but yeah, not majorly impressed by their particular attacking prowess on that occasion. But you've noticed occasionally as the stats come in, oh, we scramble that one clear, but only partially clear. It comes back in again. I was going to say, you've noticed that we are getting a little bit hammered in terms of chances created, and it's being demonstrated here. We've yet to register a chance. They've had about 3 or 4, I think. And there's a goal for them as well. After 21 minutes, it was coming, wasn't it? The pressure was beginning to show. We couldn't get it clear for any particular length of time. And eventually, after about the third attempt during this period of play, they eventually found the way through, which was from the left-hand side across into the 6-yard box. And the defender was really beaten, unfortunately, from the header. And, they take a 1-0 lead. And you can see here, this is what I'm talking about, the stats for the game. We've just registered our first shot at goal. They've had 6 and 5 on target already. And that's going to be possibly the way of the games for the next couple of games, just to, while we bed in a little bit and sort of get used to playing a system that they've probably not played before. And lots of new players as well, having not played together before. 1-0 down at half-time, considering the stats of the game isn't terrible. We've had a reasonable amount of possession, but not a huge amount. And eventually we registered 3 shots at goal, but none of them actually went on target in the end. So we're beginning maybe to creep back into the game. But at 1-0 down, I kind of, it's difficult to know what to expect, really. But that's what we're dealing with. So at half-time, we're going to go in and just calmly at the moment say, I think we've been unlucky so far. I don't want to have a go at this team too early on because I don't know what they're really capable of yet. We had some good performances at times in the friendlies, but against some slightly weak opposition here and there. And you can see that again, they had a chance to go 2-0 up on that occasion from another sweeping free kick in. Didn't quite work out for them on that occasion, but we are not threatening their goal too much, are we? Coming up on the 60-minute mark, it's gone a little bit quiet, which probably is good for us. And then we're creeping into the point where I need to make a couple of substitutes, substitutions just to bring on some fresh legs a little bit. And you can see that the ratings of the players are all in about the sort of ballpark, anywhere between 6.3 to 6.7 as an average rating, which are not great, are they really? But that's something that we'll have to work on over time. So what are we going to do here? We are going to bring the old man, Ackerman. We're probably going to just call him the old man, aren't we? There's lots of nicknames in here. The Angel for D'Angelo, maybe. Tell me what you think about potential nicknames that we can sort of personalise some of these guys a little bit to our tastes. So he comes on up top anyway. D'Angelo, we are going to take him off. Basidas is a young player, but as a good prospect, I think. So we're going to bring him in that attacking central midfield role. And then a 6.4 in central midfield or a 6.4 at the back. I think we're going to change the one at the back and bring Stefan on in central defence and just try and shore that area up a little bit. We can't really remain too cautious for too long, so I think we'll change into a more positive outlook in terms of the game for the last 10-15 minutes and see whether that just changes anything slightly. There's no major change of shape that I want to do at the moment because I want to bed this one in and just see if it will work properly or not before I make any sweeping changes too soon. And it looks like we're going to lose 1-0. And we do, on the opening day of the season, a 1-0 loss against Ferro Carril Oeste. Is that good, bad, indifferent? It probably is pretty good, considering that we were supposed to finish bottom of the group and they were predicted, I think they fit about 9th in the 32 teams from the 2 groups they were ranked as. So that's not terrible, is it really, as a result? So we'll go into the dressing room and we'll just say calmly, unlucky boys, it would have been nice to win, but it wasn't to be. Just get some confidence behind them, some motivation to play for me as well, which is quite difficult at times. Let's just go in and check very quickly on the analysis page and see what we can learn from today's match. So we're not going to spend too long here at all, but you can see that it was reasonably even in certain aspects of the game. The central midfield was where the ball was kept most of the time, and we had a reasonable amount of it. The heat maps are interesting, aren't they? So they attacked us primarily down the right-hand side, which is, of course, where we've got a left-hand side gap, of course. So that's smart on their front. We're going to have to get used to that Carrilero potentially filling up some of that role. We'll watch that a bit as we go. I'll play some of the games off the episodes in a slightly longer format and just see what I can learn from it. But in terms of what we did, you can see that we had enough ball movement, both right and left as well, which is decent. So I think that's not too bad in terms of it wasn't too lopsided. We can attack from anywhere and everywhere. We just need to up the quality a little bit, and you can see that we need to up the area of the pitch, make it slightly higher up maybe. So this defensive line, maybe we need to move them up a little bit and sort of just push the play up slightly. That's, we'll keep an eye on that as the next few games progress though. In terms of the focus of attacks though, you can see that we did reasonably well. The left hand side is obviously slightly lower in terms of our people down it, so you'd expect us to be further up on the right hand side, which we were, which is good, but we attacked from all areas of the pitch. So there's some encouraging things. Gomez was our lead performer for the day at 6.7. That's not particularly great, is it? Their top guy was 7.6, for example, and then we had a 6.4 for Corzo, but he's a new guy into the club as well, so there's a lot of new players here. So you can see that just on this page alone there's some interesting things that we can learn from how it's set up at the moment. We've got some things to develop and change little bits in the tactics. Hopefully over time that will help us to get better results on the pitch, as well as just getting used to playing with each other. Anyway, that's basically going to do it for this particular section of the episode. Let's go and just check out what next episode is going to bring for us. So here we are back on the schedule page, and as I said at the beginning of this episode, really a lot of these teams don't really mean too much to me at the moment, so we could pick a really great team to come up against, and that would be as random and as it was if we picked a really bad team to come up against. So I've either got the cup game that we could come back for, we are part way through a cup run, so that might be a good one, or the one directly after it, Barracas Central. I think what we're going to do is come back and play the cup game. It's a knockout match against Cologne. Let's go and have a look at where they are. They're currently in the Premier Division above us. They've played a couple of games so far and they sit in 17th. So is there a chance for us there? Maybe, maybe not. It's unlikely, I guess, but who knows? We might be able to upset the odds a little bit. So that's the game that we're going to come back for, that cup match against Cologne, and just see how we get on there. And then we'll focus a little bit afterwards on the league as we get into this season a little bit more. So that's what's coming up. Thanks so much for joining me today, though. It's a bit of a challenging club to get your head around a little bit in terms of so many new players and the setup. I don't really understand totally in terms of the league and how it all works, but we will get there. Hopefully this season produces enough just to avoid that relegation spot and stay in the division and give us something to build on for as we progress through the season. So thanks for joining me today. Hope you'll join me for the next episode for our cup knockout game against Cologne, and see whether we can get a surprise result there. But until then, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and join my United City community. The more the merrier. Click that like button if you can. Helps to get seen by lots and lots of other people, which would be great for the channel. But until next time, take care of yourselves. I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.